What's going on, people? It's Sheni here from Icarus Growth once again with another client interview. I have my good friend Andy here. Andy is the head of student success at Client Ascension. Do you want to give everybody a brief hello?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm the head of student success inside of Client Ascension. We're a B2B coaching program that also helps people choose business offers, create models, build and scale their business, cover everything from lead generation, offer creation, sales systems, operation systems. So it's a full-fledged course. It's a very hands-on process, and everyone that just does join the program is assigned their own dedicated student success coach, which is part client success manager, client business advisor, and so we're very hands-on in the process. So there's a lot of moving pieces in what we do on a day-to-day basis. So there's a lot of operational intensity, a lot of calls, check-ins, communications, a lot of processes involved.
Nice. And for those who didn't know, I was also part of the student success team in 2022-2023 as well. And during the time there, or at least afterwards, when operating the agency, we did a bit of work on your Airtable and to get you guys up and running on a system that was just going to be a little bit more efficient for managing student success in the interim. So I want to talk about not so much what before looks like versus afterwards, because it was so long ago, but more so about the fact that it's still running for you guys almost 18-20 months later.
Yeah.
How has it been insofar as management for you, them managing their own students? What's the general situation?
Yeah, it's a day and night process, and to also just give a little context to the situation, there are so many moving pieces in things that what we do, because there's so many stages people have to go through inside of this program. You have to start with it, your offer creation, then we go straight into creating your funnel, then it goes straight into setting up your lead generation systems, then it's sales systems, operation systems. So there's a lot of checkpoints people need to hit, and they need to hit these points in. And even prior to working with you, I had already been talking to actually another agency of building up this system and worked in depth with them for 4 months, giving them all the context, giving them all the information, all the moving pieces, where the automations need to trigger, where we don't need them to trigger, all of this process. And in 4 months of working with someone, because of, again, the complexity of this, by the time they came to have a demo and see anything, it actually wasn't close to anything of what we wanted. And that's when actually, funny enough, you did actually step in. You're like, hey, do you want me to have a crack at this? Within 2 weeks, we had a fully fledged system, completely built out, tailored to our exact experience, tailored to exact need of what we wanted, with sections to cover different students, resources and templates, where certain students are, submissions, anyone in terms of covering it, payment section, when do we do reactivation campaigns, and all of these categories here, which were very integral, because it's great to get one piece of the puzzle fixed, but there's a massive compilation. And because you're also dealing with, it's not just a standard service, there's a lot of human behavioral patterns that come into play as well, and there's a lot of things that sometimes just go a little bit out of your control. And it's cool, how do you set up the rail guards here to actually prevent this, or what's the system in place there to combat that when it does come? Because again, we're not just a standard agency where it's we do e-com and we do design and copy and that's it, the stuff goes out. This is an ongoing tracking and progression, and people can start doing really well, and then people can start dropping down, and then there's so many more levels to this than was imaginable. And what you did in 2 weeks was actually create a really solid structure of something that, again, we still haven't used till this day, where everything is stored, managed, Kanbans, but then also grid templates, and it's customizable enough that anyone in the team can use it to their style and their benefit without having to be locked into one type of feature and style. But then it also gives all of the additional note sections, and it has areas where you can tick boxes and set deadlines and reminders and notification systems and patterns, where we can then fix that and do that. So again, something simple as when does someone's time in the program finish up? Cool. We have now a trigger for 90-day reminder, 60-day reminder, 30-day reminder, 2-week reminder, 1-week reminder, 3-day reminder, 1-day reminder, and then another additional reminder of hey, this person, their 6-month contract is now complete. And it gives us plenty of time, plenty of foresight to okay, what are we going to do about the situation? When it's time to have the conversation and actually work with the situation, instead of, constantly depending on, just the manual task of it all, which can be a lot, where all the SSDs now have so many notifications, triggers, reminders, and areas where we get additional context and notes to individual circumstances that are all going to variable and change. We now have all the triggers in place now so that we can just stay on top of it. We're constantly reminded of it. It's top of mind for us. It's top of mind for the student without having to do all this manual tasks. And that way now the SSEs actually have way more time to actually do what they need to be doing, which is taking calls with these guys, checking in with these guys, checking progress, updating, and actually moving the needle so much more. And like the results have spoken for itself. Since implementing the system, I think we have added like something like 50 case studies, because again, we're just so much more automated. And again, part of that process, actual Airtable itself, is individual cards of like, okay, who's ready for a case study interview? Who's ready for a Trustpilot interview? Who's ready now? Who's also like, who's stayed on the program? Who's upsold into our mastermind program, which is Olympia? Like, we now have all of this. Me as a manager, I now can see the total of like how many people are in Olympia, how many people are on back end, how many people are on front end. Okay, these people here left due to personal circumstances, like in the event that maybe someone has a family bereavement or falls himself in sickness. It's like, okay, cool. We now have a section of people who have left because of, personal tragedies. And it's like, great. And we have reminders and set times and templates there in place of like, okay, cool, when is the time to reach out to them? But we also now have the ability to set the notifications and the reminders of like, okay, now's the day to reach out to this person.
Very Same thing comprehensive. That's super helpful to understand, because even with the more human side of things, where it comes to understanding, okay, not every single person is going to go through the system or go through the program in the way that we intend. There's going to be certain issues and certain things that pop up that are just completely out of our control, but we can do the best that we can do, not just as people working for an organization, but as humans, as people who were actually speaking to these people on a day-to-day basis, and completely. Be like, hey man, like I heard, like again, like hope everything is good, X, Y, and Z happened, and I'm so sorry to hear, like how is everything? And then it just means that not only does your perception of, not only does their perception of you improve, but the perception of the actual brand and the actual company improves as well. And I actually wanted to touch on something else around this, around how you're also helping, like managing this as well. I'm also about what other people who may even have their own coaching programs, who are trying to do student success themselves, how they would benefit from some of the stuff that you've been able to do. So given what we've been able to build and given what you're able to see now, what are some of the things that you have now that other coaching programs need to have in order to have a high level of service? So
what they really do need, again, where the Airtable that you've built actually really comes into play is, again, just the human element. Speaking to other ones beforehand, it's just very like cookie cutter, out of the box, very simplistic. Yeah, I'm sure it works great for maybe like an accounting firm where everything is repeat and redone. But when you're doing a coaching program, you're dealing with people's and different skill sets and things like that as well. And, some people are going to advance faster than others. And it's like, this isn't just a, hey, step 1, step 2, step 3 for a lot of people where everything's going to work at a specific timeline, or like, again, you might have other people in your teams. It's like, this is you working with human behavior and human behavior working back with you. And this is where like the automation and the aspect of it is like, I found myself doing a few consultations with other agencies and other businesses, and we've worked with other people beforehand. It just doesn't work. It's just not that great at all. I find myself using it and then just like honestly stop using it, and everyone stops using it because the headache of trying to fix these small technical problems that have no understanding or context of the human condition, we just end up scrapping it. And this is why we ended up just staying on like simple systems such as Google Sheets and things like that. And again, keeping up with the manual tasks keep going on so much. So like a lot of coaching companies and things like that, like, we always want everyone to be at a certain stage. We always want people to complete a certain level amount of tasks at a certain period of time. But the problem with that is everyone has different skill sets. Like for us, for example, one thing that we need everyone to do when they join the program is make a VSL. Some people are really content savvy and are great and can do it within a day or two. Some people need a week. But this doesn't even just factor for that one example. This is every sort of example. Some people are great at sales. Some people aren't great at sales. So it doesn't matter what type of coaching program that you're doing. It's going to be, even if it was a fitness program, some people are going to make the commitment to do their certain exercises, stick to their diet super well. Some people aren't. And it's like, you try and build a tracking system, a monitoring system, like a CRM to track all this sort of progress. It's like, it doesn't work a certain way without having the caveat and the actual foresight and the logistical thinking of like, okay, how can we account for human error? That's where most people really mess up, and that's where most coaching programs have a really poor system with this, and it ends up being so much more work on the CSMs, on the account managers, because they have to have so much more foresight. And again, we're only human, they're only human. This is where a lot of human error starts really falling into play without having the proper system built.
100%. That's actually the point. When it comes to, I guess, tangible, we look now insofar as like the amount of time that goes towards, you know, managing the guys versus needing to find information or just like random bits of admin.
Yeah, I mean, before we had the system, like, there was so much more one-to-ones needed, so many more team meetings needed, and they also had to be extended to so much longer. Like before, I needed to have a 1 hour one-to-one with every single person so that you could actually go through everything manually and then check the boxes and be like, who's progressing, who's not progressing, who's doing well, who's not doing well. And there was a huge amount of back and forth before you could actually identify. And, you know, it's like you have to mentally and you have to like manually break down all of the data, and then you can start digging into the pain points of, okay, what's going on with this person's situation. But now, because I have the foresight already, or I even take any meetings, I can just go to the Airtable. I can start seeing the process. I can start seeing their progress. I can see the updates of where they are, what they're doing, where they've been, and that way now I can actually just start my meetings. Okay, who's high priority, who's mid priority, and who's super low priority, and then actually share the updates, what's happening. I can actually then coach them and give them, you know, and actually have the conversation between a manager, where beforehand it did feel quite rushed, you know, not having that bird's eye view of actually what's happening across the company. It gets really, it just puts in a huge amount of bandwidth on you as a manager. It also puts bandwidth on the actual SSEs, and then it's just, you're having much more longer in-depth conversations, and you find yourself like just running more in circles. And try and compound that then over 7 meetings with these guys. You know, 7 meetings, 7 hours a day. That's a whole day of work just on meetings. Now that's been cut down to 3.5 hours, and it's just way faster. We're having way more impact. We're setting clear deadlines, clear action items, clear next steps, and everyone's just on the same wavelength. And again, having this bird's eye view, it's not only me having the foresight, they have the foresight over their specific accounts that they're managing, and it just makes everything way faster. And again, having all the features in it in place to account for the human error then gives me the understanding and the context of what's happening, because I might very often in situations be like, hey, why is this person only here when they should be here? But then instead of having to run to the SSE or the account manager and have this conversation and break it all down and have this massive back and forth, I can just look into the notes section, see the context, and be like, oh, I see what happened here. Like, you know, it could be anything from like their internet cut out and they couldn't do anything for a while, or again, a personal tragedy their way, or this, it could even be something as simple as like, this person's on vacation, they've asked not to be contacted for 2 weeks while they're away with their family. It's like, oh, okay, cool, that makes sense.
So, and this is something that sort of like pops into mind that I hear Alex Hormozy talk about a lot, where he says that strategy is prioritization. Because of what you've actually been able to do now, where you've cut the amount of meeting time required for you to manage the team of 7 SSEs that you have in half, you've now also been able to increase and improve the strategy of student success in general, which has had the impact that it has had, which has led to the situation where you guys are closing, you know, 3 clients a day, and you're still able to keep up with everything. Is that kind of like the situation that's happening?
Oh, 1000%. The difference is absolutely insurmountable. Like, you know, we're managing roughly nearly a little around 400 people. So this is a lot of people that we're working with, and there's a lot of moving pieces with all of this. And it's not the front end of sales capacity and understanding the capacity where we're at and numbers wise and things like that too, but it also has significant benefits to the back end as well, because now we have like, it gives us all the data and all of the foresight to be like, okay, cool, and now what are we going to control about the back end process as well? So you're controlling the front end, and you knowing your capacity, and you know your numbers, and you know what's available and what's not available and things like that there too. And it helps me understand like, okay, do I need to make a hire? You know, what's happening with the team, who has more capacity, not capacity, but also the back end of being like, okay, cool, who is all of our renewals? I can then work with all those account managers. What's the strategy behind that there too? So it's generated a lot more revenue, and it's great to even have the, you know, the understanding there to like also then explain to the sales team, this is what's happening on our end. So you have the foresight there, but then also myself working with the guys into the back end of like, cool, and I can actually make financial projections, and I can actually give like some data of like, hey, this is what we're looking at, this is where I think we're going to be in a month's time, this is where I thinking we're going to be on 2 months time, because I now understand what the back end revenue is looking like. I'm looking at what the continuation is looking like. I'm looking at how many people are upselling, and so now we have all of this foresight. We can make all the systems and we can make all the decisions, and we can actually play to our strengths.
Nice. That's super interesting to see, especially from your perspective as well. So then, if I was to leave you with I call it a riddle, it's not really a riddle at all, it's very much just a question about X, Y, or Z. If you were to pick between, let's say, a freelancer, an in-house employee, or myself, or someone like myself, in order to build these types of systems, like, what is your decision criteria, and what do you think other people should base that decision on as well?
I think, funds comes down to one. I think with a freelancer, I don't see much benefit unless you're doing something very simplistic, like a standard, like maybe onboarding automation process. But it depends really on your business and how simple it is. An in-house employee is actually, I find, not the best decision, because when the system is built, and if it's been built well, you're actually spending more time finding them work than to justify their pay. Where I believe working with an agency such as yourself, where it's like, okay, I'm working with a professional, I'm working with someone who's giving me an in-depth onboarding process, who's asking questions, who's digging in, who's actually looking at the full scope of the project, and is like coming up with an actual clear, direct timeline of like, okay, from the time we start to the time we finish, this is what's going to be done. And then also having a complete, clear-cut, complete project, and there's no like major follow-up retainers, there's nothing else really there. Like, you have what you've paid for, you've gotten the full experience, it's completely built out. There's no need to like there's no real need for a continuation. You're just getting something professionally well made, done in a timely manner with ongoing communication. And again, like, I think we had, in the 2 weeks when you were building out the system, I think we had 2 calls. The first initial call was, again, the onboarding of like figuring out all the pieces we wanted to move. The second week was like, hey, here's the beta, this is what it's going to look like, what you want changed, what you want tweaked, do you need to add anything here, is there anything that we've missed from kind of the notes or anything like that. And then on week 2 we had something complete, ready to go, tested, and being in use. And then I think we had like 1 or 2 things to tweak on our end, just at last second. That took, I think, 1 day. And from there, we've had something now that has stood the test of time. So yeah, I would highly advise people to go and work with a professional and not a freelancer, because to a certain degree their experience is questionable. And also, I mean, you don't really know how long the project's going to be or the quality of the work it's going to be and things like that. It, again, depends on the freelancer, depends on the onboarding experience. But in-house employee, unless you actually have the work for them, unless you actually have like major systems that you need to fix. But for us, we're very happy just working with you and having it done and dusted in 2 weeks, and we hit the ground running, and we're still using the system today. So I couldn't recommend it enough.
100%. So any final words where people can catch you if you're putting content out, which you should be putting content out, Andy, with the vast amount of knowledge that you have? Any final words? Anything else you want to say?
No, you can probably find me on LinkedIn at Andrew Connellan, and if you look up Client Ascension. But honestly, if you have even 10% curiosity of working with someone like Sheni or getting some systems in place for whether you're doing an info product business or a standard agency or a lead generation business, I couldn't recommend Sheni enough. He is diligent, like advanced in terms of his expertise. He saw problems and potholes and like areas that I knew was like, if I was trying to do it myself, I probably would have missed up a little bit. And again, back to the time when I first had that consultation with another agency beforehand, it just, they didn't have the foresight that Sheni did. And so that's what made this process so hands-on. So yeah, I couldn't recommend it enough. But no, that's me.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you very much, Andy. As always, IcarusGrowth.com to find out more. Sheni Salami on YouTube to find out anything else you want to find out. Sheni Salami on X.com and on LinkedIn. You can find me same place, same name everywhere. Instagram too. So I will catch you guys in a bit. Thank you very much, Andy. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Shen. Take care.